If you're sending a kid off to college for the first time, there's a lot to prepare for.
I think that's the biggest thing, is just saying, there's going to be quite a big change here in terms of the expectations and how people treat you. You're definitely more of an adult when you get to college.
Today on Mom Squad, we talk to U.S. News and World Report education journalist Cole Claiborne about the best ways you can save money and prepare your teen for the real world.
I just assumed that if I wasn't this, standout student, that scholarships weren't for me. And I could not have been more wrong. There's plenty of scholarships that are out there for students in all kinds of different facets.
And if you have a teen that isn't college bound, we're going to tell you about the most in-demand jobs with great starting salaries, no college degree required. Hi everyone, welcome to Mom Squad. I'm Maureen Kyle. Now that we are well into June, it's graduation party season, and many of you might have a child or grandchild graduating and heading off to school. This is a big change for kids in terms of responsibility. Now they are in charge of their education, their time, and money. This summer, it's not just about buying them the right items for their dorm room, but also a time to prepare them for the challenges of being an adult out on their own. Cole Claiborne is a journalist for U.S. News and World Report who researches and writes about higher education. He and I had a chance to talk about the biggest ways you can prepare your teen for freshman year. Preparing kids for college, parents always need to know, especially this time of year, graduations are happening, and now they might have that child who is going to start freshman year. And we want to make sure that kids are prepared. What do you think? You wrote an article on this. What do you think is the first step that parents should really be thinking about when preparing their soon-to-be freshmen?
Well, I just think back to when I left high school to go to college. I went to a college out of my hometown. So I think a lot of the advice maybe depends on where the student ends up going to college, because I know a lot of times students will stay at home to save money, and that can kind of get into a little tricky situation where you're still under your parents' roof, but you're also being treated like an adult whenever you get to college, and the parents want to treat you that way because you're 18 and you're of age to be an adult. And so it's this awkward transitional period where you're still kind of under your parents' roof. Even if you go out of town for college, they're still a lot of times paying for a lot of your bills and things like that. But you're also trying to be an adult. You're learning how to be an adult. A lot of times parents will let you take on certain bills so that you can kind of get that sense of being an adult and transition into it. So I think the first piece of advice, it kind of depends on the actual situation of the child. But I think just preparing them that this is not going to be like high school. Your professors are going to treat you like an adult. They're going to expect you to be responsible. Nobody's making you go to class or turn assignments in like whenever you were in first grade through 12th grade. You have to decide that you want to go to class and that you want to take ownership over your education. Whereas whenever you're in high school, if you had a missed assignment or a late assignment, your parents or teachers or counselors were on you about that, and you might have had a lot of leeway. It's not going to be the case in college. They're going to say, oh, you didn't want to turn that in? Okay, well, that's your choice. Or you don't come to college, or you don't come to class. Well, that's your choice. You're paying for it. So you definitely want to go and get the use out of it. So there's always students that go to college and they're kind of there for the experience, and they don't take ownership over their education, and it shows. And unfortunately, a lot of those students don't make it through, and they end up spending the money. So that's the big thing, is that you really have to turn this switch of, I now have the ownership. And for me as a student, I remember that being a really good thing, because where you might have your parents, bearing down on you to do homework, and you kind of do it begrudgingly, it almost is like whenever you take your own education in your own hands and you take ownership over, at least for me, I found that I really had more of a passion for learning, and I really cared more deeply about it. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is just saying, there's going to be quite a big change here in terms of the expectations and how people treat you. You're definitely more of an adult when you get to college.
Yeah, I remember an administrator telling me I needed to get my act together because I didn't do the paperwork that I needed to do to hand something in. It was like over paperwork. I'm like, I never had to do my own paperwork before. It was a very big surprise. You also talk about time management. And I think, knowing how I was treated, and my kids are younger, but, parents kind of keep that schedule typically for a kid or a teen, but now time management is going to be on their shoulders.
Yeah. And what's tough about college is that there's this balance of you want to get involved socially and you want to take advantage of all that's there. I mean, that's part of the college experience, but you're also there to complete your academic studies and complete your degree and set yourself up for your career. And so that's where some students get themselves in trouble is they go a little bit heavier into the social part of college and they focus less on the academic side. I mean, it's really tempting when it's Friday night and you've got a paper due the next week or, whatever, sometime soon. And your friends are saying, hey, let's go out to dinner or let's go to this party or go to this basketball game or whatever. It's really hard sometimes to say no to that and stay and be disciplined. And I had a roommate in college who was just very, very good about being disciplined. He was a physical education major and was an athlete, and he kind of had that ingrained in him. And I always admired how, he would say and he'd watch a football game with us on a Sunday, but then after that, he wouldn't watch any more sports. He'd go back and keep studying. He'd take that 3 hours out of the day of the week to watch the game with us, and then he'd go back and study, and he did really well. And, you kind of have to make sure that you're disciplined because, your parents aren't calling up and checking on you and nobody's, keeping you accountable. You have to decide on your own. And so you have to make your own time management schedule. And, if you have a job, you got to factor that in as well. And so there's just a lot of things that, are quite different whenever you get off to college because you really are learning how to build those skills, time management and responsibility skills for whenever you do become an adult, which, I mean, you're technically an adult in college, but whenever you get into the real working world and things like that.
Right. Well, that kind of leads into another piece of advice that you wrote about is keeping in contact with an adult, a parent, a guardian. Do you still have that crutch? Should the kids still have that person that is checking in on them, or they at least have to check in with the parent to almost report back, like, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm doing it, just as that transition is happening?
Yeah, I'm sure it depends on the relationship between students and parents. I know for me, I wanted to have a little bit of a buffer, which is why I didn't stay in town for college. Not that I didn't want to have a relationship with my parents. I knew that for me to develop as the person that I wanted to be, I needed to be out on my own a little bit. And I certainly called my parents. I certainly called my brothers and my brother and my sister and, my friends, but I wanted to learn how to navigate this life on my own and make some mistakes. And obviously, see your parents. And I went to school 2 hours away, so it was easy to drive home if I needed to, especially for holidays and things like that. But some students have a different type of relationship with their parents. So I'm sure whatever that relationship is necessitates the level of contact. But again, I mean, the parents, even though it's different than high school, they're still caring very deeply about your success. I mean, a lot of times parents are the ones paying for the education, or at least part of it. And so they want to make sure that their money is being well spent, that you're not just there, screwing around and doing things you shouldn't do. So yeah, there's got to be a level of communication. But I think it just depends on the student and the parent and what is healthy, because, from what I gather talking with experts for this story is, you want there to be a healthy balance where the student doesn't feel like they're constantly being patrolled, but the parents also don't want to just let their student go without any contact. They want to know what's going on. They care. They care. I mean, it's their parents. They care about their success. They care about, are they making friends? Are they fitting in? Is it working out? So there's got to be a healthy balance there, and I think that probably depends on the students and their relationship with their parents.
It's an investment. The parents are investing in the education in so many ways. Mm-hmm. And something else, a point that you bring up also in this article that I think wasn't talked about as much when I was looking at colleges is really researching that major and researching what that teen or young adult is going to be going into. What kind of advice do you have when it comes to that?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of students don't know what they want to major in until their first or second year that they're there. And that's okay. I mean, I've talked with plenty of experts that say really those first couple of years, while it's good if you have an idea, it's also good for some students to explore and find out what they want to do, because there's a good amount of students that go in and they end up changing their major twice or three times or even more. And it can cause them to delay their graduation because they change. But the key is that students find what it is that they care about and are passionate about, and what you're passionate about at age 18 might not be what you're passionate about at age 20. And you might decide, okay, I thought I could make a career out of that, but maybe you had an epiphany or maybe you worked an internship in that field and you realized maybe it isn't what I wanted to do. I was fortunate that when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to be a journalist, and that's what I went to college for, and that's what I ended up doing. Took a brief break to teach high school and teach journalism at the high school level, but back in journalism. But that was always what I wanted to do, and so I never changed my major. But there's plenty of students that do, and you get, maybe you might get into some classes and realize, okay, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. And just, your passions change whenever you get to college. I think that's one of the best parts about college is you find out who you are as a person. For me, it was a really good time to find out who I was as a student. When in high school, I was just much more concerned about athletics. I was a tennis player, and that's what I cared a lot about. And not that I was a bad student, it just wasn't as much of a priority at that time. And then when I got to college, I realized, okay, this is a great opportunity to learn from some really bright professors that have been accomplished in my field. And it was, I took ownership over it. And so with the major, I mean, just, you don't necessarily have to have it figured out whenever you get to college, but you definitely want to use that first year or two to really explore what it is that you're passionate about and find something that can align with those passions and your skills. Yeah,
great advice. The other thing that I think a lot of parents focus on, so maybe this is speaking to the parents, there's always the shopping trips of like, what do we need in the dorm room? And I think there's a lot of focus on how do you prepare your kid with all of the supplies that they need. In your research, what have you found about making sure you get exactly what that student needs without obviously overloading a very small dorm?
Yeah, dorms are very small, and I know the college that I went to, we were required to stay in the dorms for at least the first year or two, and that may have changed as enrollment has grown and maybe they don't have as much space. And I know some colleges have different rules on that. Sometimes students are able to get an apartment their freshman year, but more often than not, you're staying in a dorm and it's not very big, and you have half the size of that room because you're sharing it with somebody. And so the best thing is if you have a roommate who coordinate with them to figure out, hey, I'm bringing this, so you don't need to bring this as well. That way you don't have two of the same thing. Probably only need one mini fridge in a dorm. You don't need two of them unless you really care that much to separate your food. But usually, like, you can share a microwave, you could share a mini fridge. Sometimes you maybe even be able to share a TV. And so it just depends on, if you know your roommate and can coordinate with them what you're bringing. But I remember when I was a freshman, there was just this big kind of like, I don't know if it was a fair or something in the main center of campus where it was just a bunch of donated stuff and free stuff that these organizations had. It was just a bunch of tents, and you could walk by, and if it wasn't free, it was like $1. And I remember getting like one of those little caddies that you could put your soap and shampoo in to take to the showers. I bought it for like $1 and bought a lamp for $1. So a lot of times colleges will have cheap sales on things that you need. And whenever you're 18, 19, you don't necessarily need the nicest things. Right. You can get by with kind of the bare necessities. But probably, for the maximizing the space, what I heard from experts is, communicate with the people that you're rooming with if and kind of figure out, hey, if you're bringing this, I won't bring this. We can kind of share, and that way we're not overcrowding that room.
Coming up after a quick break, who doesn't want to cut out those college costs? Cole talks about the surprising ways to find scholarships you don't want to leave money on the table. Welcome back. Today we are talking about sending teens off to college for the first time. Obviously, they have a lot to learn about independence, but there are ways that you can best prepare them to succeed freshman year. Cole Claiborne with U.S. News and World Report researches and writes about higher education as a journalist. He talks about smart money moves your college student can make. What do you think parents and those teens should be talking about in terms of approaching freshman year with smart money skills?
Yeah, this is a conversation I've had in kind of different facets lately, is just about preparing college students for financial planning after college. But also, I mean, whenever you get to high school, when you get to college, one of the things that I've heard is, not all schools teach some sort of financial literacy or financial planning type of class. Some have started to, and I think that's a really good thing. But, that's not the case. I mean, parents need to have that conversation with them, because a lot of times students don't go to college with a lot of money in their pocket. They may have worked a job whenever they were in high school, and a lot of times those jobs pay a decent amount, but not a ton where they have a lot of savings, unless a student has fortunately inherited some money or that sort of a thing, or if students are on scholarship, sometimes they get a little bit of an income from that. But more often than not, a college student is not, their bank account is not real huge. And so, yeah, you have to be smart about, where do I spend this money? If I've got meal plans, maybe I use that instead of going out to eat every day, because that can get really, really costly. And I remember being a student, I didn't always want to have to call my parents and ask them to send me money or add money to my account or things like that. It's never, I felt like that was not a good way to show that I was growing up as an adult. And so it's hard, because budgeting is really hard. It's not fun. It's much more fun to say, yeah, let's go get dinner, or let's go out and, order a pizza, or whatever you want to do. It's not as much fun to say, I think I'm going to stay in and save my money and eat the food that I bought at the grocery store. But that's part of being an adult, and that's sometimes what you have to do, and that's the decision you have to make. And so it comes down to discipline. A lot of this, I think, comes down to discipline, and that's one of the skills I know that I learned whenever I was in college. And not that I've mastered it, I'm in my 30s now, not that I've mastered it, but it's one of the skills you learn and really start to develop. And certainly financial planning and money management is definitely part of that.
Yeah. All those lessons that I should have learned and am still learning. I mean, that is like, I don't know any adult who has nailed it yet. Yeah. We could talk forever. You had a lot of great points in this article, which we will share with everybody. But is there anything, especially since you have studied and reported on education, you've been through it, I've been through it, is there anything that, as we wrap up here, you think, gosh, I wish I would have known this piece of advice when I was going into college?
Man, honestly, just about every article that I've written, I'm like, I wish that I had learned this when I was in college, or before I was going to college. I think the biggest thing, and this isn't necessarily planning, I guess it's kind of planning for freshman year, but one of the biggest misconceptions I had as a student in high school was that you had to be a 4.0 student to get scholarships. I just assumed that if I wasn't this standout student, that scholarships weren't for me. And I could not have been more wrong. There's plenty of scholarships that are out there for students in all kinds of different facets. I wrote a story one time that was about, if you have certain hobbies, I can't remember, this was like equestrian, things like that. Like there's scholarships out there for the most random things that you wouldn't think of, that if students have an interest in it, they can probably find at least some money that is out there. Because a lot of these scholarships aren't sought out by many people, and there's not a lot of applicants. And so just by the nature of competitiveness, you might win some because there's not any out there, nobody out there that's applying for them. And so I would say that's the biggest thing that I would tell students, is that really do take time to do research and try to uncover every stone that you can to find if there's money available for you, because I'm in my 30s and I'm still paying off student loans. And so I would caution any student before they take out loans to really explore every type of funding or scholarships or grants that might be available to them, even if they think I'm not a standout student. A lot of times, some scholarships, they won't care as much about the grades as much as they do about who you are as a person. And so the grades are obviously a big part of it, but you don't have to be a 4.0 student. You don't have to have a perfect SAT or ACT score. And even if you're mostly A's and B's, you don't even have to be at that level sometimes to get a scholarship. And so I think I would tell students to really explore what's available to them. And if they think they're not qualified, there's probably something that they're qualified for, even if it's $500. Apply for it, and that'll help. And then even when you get to college, in fact, the scholarships that I got were ones that I got after I had started in college. And so even whenever you get to college, there's some that you can apply for through your organization. For instance, I was the editor of our student newspaper, and that brought with it a scholarship. And there's organizations on campus that you can get involved in that might have their own scholarships. And so never stop looking for money to help pay for college. That'll certainly help you as you enter into your adult life. And as we're talking about financial planning and money management, not having as much student loan debt to pay off is certainly going to help you.
Right. So smart. I didn't even think about when you're already in college. There's always that misconception that you have to find the scholarship before you commit to a college and go and start paying all those big bills. Cole, thank you so much. This was so insightful. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You can check out all of Cole Claiborne's articles on U.S. News and World Report. We will have a link to the article that he wrote about the 18 ways to prepare your soon-to-be college student. And coming up, college isn't for everyone. In fact, across the country, there are high-paying jobs just waiting for skilled workers. We're going to show you how high schools are preparing kids for high-demand skilled labor like auto mechanics. Welcome back. If college isn't for your teen, trade industries are desperate for skilled workers. Employers are paying big bucks for people who can work in certain trades. There's a nationwide shortage of auto mechanics. To keep up with demand across the country, the number of skilled workers needs to double. Some high schools are preparing kids for these jobs, which can lead to a high-paying job right out of school. Sydney Stallworth from our St. Louis station takes a closer look.
There it is.
With a little bit of elbow grease and a whole lot of street smarts, these teens are gearing up for a career in car tech and maintenance.
This field can get you exactly where you want to be.
It's all gas, no brakes for this class of auto tech students at South Tech High School in Sunset Hills.
And every day is new, and I love every second of it.
Reading, writing, arithmetic, and repair shop. Students get auto training on top of their traditional classes at their home schools. When they graduate, they're student certified in automotive service excellence.
Some go right into the workforce. They're all eligible for like an entry-level automotive position, like the tire and lubes.
But some of the students want to build on those skills.
If I do go to school for it after high school, I'm thinking about going to Georgia State Tech.
Going to a trade school like Rankin or STLCC Forest Park in their automotive division, it is so much cheaper than going to a four-year college.
Whichever route you take, there aren't many speed bumps on the road to success in this industry.
They're going to be in high demand in the next 5 years.
And these students see dollar signs at the finish line.
Because technicians are in such high demand, they can basically make their paycheck.
We've seen over the last 3 or 4 years that the pay has increased dramatically.
Gender equality stalled out in the field during and after the pandemic, dropping from 12,000 women in 2019 to about 4,000 working in the industry in 2020. Now numbers are up to over 130,000 women, but the industry is still 90% male.
Since I've been here, I've learned a lot more about how I can live off of this, and you can make a lot of money doing it, especially for females.
As they shift their own expectations for the future into high gear.
This is probably the best part of my day because for sure it's hands-on. I create so many different things.
If you want to make money, it's a good thing. If you like working with your hands, it's a great thing.
In St. Louis, car dealerships are even partnering with the high schools. They donate cars for the students to work on, so they're familiar with the cars on their lots. And then when the kids graduate, they are recruited by the dealerships to get a job right out of school. So something to think about if your teen is more interested in cars than college classes. Thank you for joining me here on Mom Squad. Please join the squad and connect with us on social. You can find us on Facebook, Mom Squad with Maureen Kyle, and on Instagram @MomSquadShow. This is where you can weigh in on some of the stories, meet other moms to share thoughts and ideas, and even request topics that we can cover right here on the show. We all know it takes a village or a squad. I'm Maureen Kyle. We'll see you back here next time.